What if I told you that the world's biggest brands aren't paying the same sky-high tariffs that are crushing small businesses right now? While small importers scramble to survive a 125% tariff hike, companies like Nike, Apple, and Columbia are quietly gaming the system, saving millions in broad daylight. And the craziest part is that it's all completely legal. So how are they pulling this off, and why aren't more people talking about it? Well, this isn't some offshore shell company trick. These brands are using clever loopholes, little-known customs rules, and supply chain jujitsu to slash their tariff bills by up to 99%. And no, you don't need to be a Fortune 500 company to make this work. These tactics are available to small businesses as well. So in this video, I'll break down the exact tactics small importers are using to not just survive the tariff wave, but to turn it into a competitive edge. You'll see real examples of how companies are legally dodging duties using smart classifications, legal workarounds, and supply chain magic you can start applying today. Because if you're paying full freight right now, chances are you are paying way too much. Now, the first way big companies dodge tariffs is through a tactic called tariff engineering, which is intentionally designing products to fall into a lower tax category. Take Converse All-Star Chucks, for example. If you own a pair, you might have noticed they have fuzzy bottoms. But these fuzzy soles aren't there for extra grip or comfort. They're there to save on taxes. By covering more than 50% of the sole with felt, Converse gets their shoes classified as slippers under US Customs rules. Now, why does that matter? Because while regular shoes can face import tariffs as high as 37.5% depending on the materials, slippers only get hit with a 3% rate. And when you're selling millions of pairs, that small change adds up to a huge amount of savings. And here's the kicker. The fuzzy part wears off after some use, turning the shoe back into a normal sneaker. That's tariff engineering in action. Clever, legal, and incredibly effective. So ask yourself, would you redesign your product if it meant saving millions? Well, big brands do this every single day. And Converse isn't alone. Just wait until you hear what Columbia is doing, because they've taken tariff engineering to a whole new level. Columbia doesn't just make outdoor clothing and hiking gear, they built an entire system around minimizing import taxes. Their design team works hand in hand with merchandisers, developers, and customs specialists to ensure every product is optimized for the lowest possible tariff. And here's how deep it goes. Under US Customs rules, certain women's garments with pockets below the waist qualify for lower duty rates than those without. So what does Columbia do? They add tiny, strategically placed pockets near the waistline of some women's shirts. Not for function, but for classification. It's not just a fashion choice, it is a financial one. And without those pockets, certain blouses made from man-made fibers could face tariffs as high as 26.9% as a base. But add a pocket, a ribbed waistband, or even a drawstring at the bottom, and suddenly that same garment qualifies for a rate below 16%. It's subtle, it's smart, and when you're moving thousands of units, it is a game changer. But what if you didn't even need to change your product? Just change who pays the tariff. This second strategy big brands use to slash their tariff bills is something called the first sale rule, and here's how it works. Tariffs are typically calculated based on the declared value of a product when it enters the United States. If you buy a product from a supplier for $10 and resell it for $20, but declare $20 as the customs value, you're paying way more in tariffs than necessary. And a lot of brand new importers make this mistake. The first sale rule lets you legally pay tariffs based on the original manufacturer's price, not the marked up price you paid your supplier. So let's break this down with two quick examples. In scenario 1, you are the importer of record. You pay tariffs on the price you paid your supplier. So for example, you buy a product for $20 and the tariff is 25%, you pay $5 in tariffs. Now in scenario 2, your supplier is the importer of record and you pay for your order via DDP or delivery duty paid. And this is where the supplier acts as the importer and pays all the customs duties and fees on your behalf, and you pay a lump sum to your factory. And in this case, tariffs are paid on the supplier's internal cost. In other words, what the factory charged them for the products that you are buying. For example, let's say the supplier paid $10 to have your product made. The tariff is 25%. Now you're only paying $2.50 in tariffs and saving 50%. Pretty slick, right? And this isn't some shady loophole. It is a legit method as long as it's documented properly. Your supplier must agree to quote a DDP price and act as the official importer of record. And if US Customs audits the shipment, they need to show a full paper trail of the transaction from the factory to the middleman to you. But when done right, this strategy can save you thousands because you're still paying the tariff just on a much lower declared value. Same product, same shipment, half the tariff bill. So if you're not asking your supplier for a DDP quote and letting them be the importer of record, you're probably overpaying right now. By the way, if you're interested in learning how to source your products at the lowest prices possible, make sure you sign up for my free 6-day e-commerce mini course below. It's 100% free and I guarantee you'll learn a lot. Still with me? Because the next strategy literally gives you money back and it's called the duty drawback. And here's how it works. If you import products into the US and then later export or destroy these goods, you can file a claim with US Customs to get up to 99% of your paid duties refunded. Yes, the government will literally give you your money back, but only if you ask for it. Let's walk through a simple example. Imagine you run a US business selling custom water bottles. You import 10,000 bottles from China, paying $2 per unit and a 25% tariff, and that's $20,000 in product costs plus $5,000 in tariffs. A couple months later, you land a big order from a client in Canada and ship those 2,000 bottles internationally. Since you exported goods that were previously imported, you now qualify to file a duty drawback claim. All you need to do is submit the proper documentation to US Customs, providing the export, typically shipping records, invoices, and a few official forms. In this case, you'd be eligible to get back up to 99% of the tariffs you paid on those 2,000 bottles, meaning the government could send you a check for $990. The takeaway here is every international order you fulfill could be partially or even fully exempt from the tariffs. So if you're not claiming duty drawbacks, you could be leaving serious money on the table. Now this next move is the ultimate legal tariff dodge, and it's done by changing a product's entire identity. And here's how it works. Right now, tariffs are based on where a product is made or its country of origin. If a product is made in China, for example, it might face a 125% tariff. But if that same product is considered to be made in Mexico or India, it might have a 0 or very low tariff due to favorable trade agreements. And the trick is how the country of origin is defined. The US defines country of origin not just by where all the parts come from, but where the product undergoes substantial transformation. Let's say you buy your parts in China, ship them to Mexico for final assembly, and that assembly is considered a significant transformation. Well then legally, Mexico becomes the country of origin. And the result? You bypass Chinese tariffs and import at Mexico's lower rate. Here's a real-world example. Let's say you import LED desk lamps. The base, the wiring, the switch, and the LED light all come from China. You ship all those parts to Mexico where they're assembled into the final product. US Customs reviews this and says, yes, this counts as substantial transformation. The country of origin is now Mexico. Now, you pay Mexico's tariff rate, not China's, and it's not cheating. It's just understanding the rules and using them better than your competitors. Companies have been doing this for years already, and it's going to happen even more after these new tariffs. But what if you didn't want to move production? Well, it turns out that there's a way to delay or even skip tariffs without changing factories. And this little known way is by using a bonded warehouse or a foreign trade zone or FTZ. A bonded warehouse is a secure facility approved by US Customs where you can store imported goods without paying any duties or tariffs until those goods officially enter the US market. A foreign trade zone or FTZ works similarly. It is a designated area, often located near ports or airports, that is treated as outside US Customs territory for tariff purposes, even though it's physically inside the country. So how do these save you money? Well, first, you don't have to pay tariffs until your goods leave the warehouse or the FTZ and enter US commerce. This allows you to delay your cash outflow, especially if you're holding inventory or waiting for demand. Second, under certain conditions, you can actually avoid the tariffs altogether. Let's say you import products, store them in a bonded warehouse or an FTZ, and then later export them to another country. Since they never officially entered the US market, you pay 0 tariffs. And third, FTZs can actually lower the tariffs you owe if you do some processing or assembly on site. For example, suppose you import bicycle parts from Taiwan with a tariff rate of 12%. You bring those parts into an FTZ, assemble them into a finished bike, and then enter them into the US market. Well, if the tariff on finished bicycles is only 5%, you get to pay the lower rate, saving 7% in duties. This is completely legal, underutilized, and incredibly effective for brands with complex supply chains or international sales. And now for a paperwork trick that's saving importers up to 20% with no factory changes required. This tactic is called the unbundling strategy, and here's how it works. When you import a product, the total invoice price may include things like the cost, design fees, advertising, royalties, freight, commissions, software licenses, but not all these are taxable. Only certain costs count toward the customs value. Unbundling means breaking out on paper in your contracts or invoices any fees that aren't dutiable, so they don't get taxed. So for example, let's say you import a smart speaker and you pay your supplier $100 per unit. This includes $80 for the actual physical product, $10 for the software, and $10 for an R&D reimbursement. If you just declare $100 at customs, you pay duties on the full amount. But if you unbundle the invoice, customs may only charge duties on the $80, excluding software or the R&D fees if they are classified properly. This can reduce your tariff bill by 20% or more. And just to be clear, you're not cheating the system, you're just declaring more accurately. If you separate out the non-dutiable charges and restructure pricing, you could legally reduce what you owe in tariffs. And if none of these work, here's what brands are doing right now to survive. The final way companies are dealing with tariffs is by cutting corners on their products. It's not flashy or strategic, but it's happening everywhere. And you've probably seen it yourself. Maybe your favorite restaurant started shrinking portion sizes while using bigger plates to make it less obvious. And this isn't your imagination, it is a real tactic called shrinkflation. And now, the same thing is happening in e-commerce. Take Groomsday, an online retailer. To keep prices down, they've stopped including non-essential items like batteries and decorative packaging in their shipments. Or look at Aurora World, a toy company. They've quietly reduced the number of paint colors on their products, downgraded to thinner paper, and switched to more affordable packaging materials, all to absorb rising costs from tariffs. Now this isn't ideal, but when margins are getting crushed, these small adjustments can make the difference between a profit and a loss. And while not as sophisticated as tariff engineering or bonded warehouses, this bare bones approach is often the last resort, and it's becoming more common as tariffs continue to rise. So now you know, tariffs aren't always the death sentence they seem to be. The big guys are playing a different game, and now you can too. Whether it's reclassifying your products, using first sale pricing, or setting up in a foreign trade zone, these strategies aren't just legal, they're designed for businesses like yours to survive and thrive. But here's the truth. Most importers will never use them because they don't even know they exist. And if you found even one idea in this video that could save you money, imagine what else is possible when you start thinking like a pro. Now that you understand how to avoid tariffs, make sure you watch this video here on how to move production to other countries outside of China.